Gaining freedom from health debt is really what this podcast and greatmed.org is all about. Putting power in your hands to improve your God-given ability to be healthy. Many people with preventable disease want to make lifestyle changes. They want to improve or reverse disease, but they don't know how. Walk, Don't Run to the Doctor is the resource hub that is a cure for a common confusion about healthy living. Welcome back to Walk, Don't Run to the Doctor with Miles Hassell. I'm a physician in Portland, Oregon, and we take care of people every day with serious problems who find that they can really incorporate whole food concepts, activity concepts, as critical parts of their treatment. And one of the questions that comes up whenever we're talking about whole foods is vegetable oils. And so there's all these sales pitches for avocado oil and canola oil and soy oil and safflower oil and peanut oil and all these other oils, all these other industrially processed oils. And there's arguments made, smoke point, for example. So which oil should you use? Well, I submit that there's only one vegetable oil that actually has evidence for improving human health, and that is olive oil, extra virgin olive oil in particular. So I think we can all agree that extra virgin olive oil is a good choice. It is more expensive, but it sure is, as my mother used to say, it's a lot cheaper than healthcare. So there's that. There's coconut oil, which has historical precedent and is probably good. It's just we don't have the outcome studies to demonstrate that. So I'll give you that virgin coconut oil is also probably good based on historical precedent. There's lots of traditional oils that when made in a traditional way are flavorful, sometimes too flavorful for people, and when used fresh, which we are very hard to get in our society, are good for you. So walnut oil, sesame oil, flaxseed oil, for example, all have their place. But in terms of the modern kitchen and the contemporary kitchen, those less well-known oils, although traditional, although healthy, and almost certainly healthy, don't really have a useful place because of both expense and availability. So that leaves us with all these industrially processed oils. And you may ask, what do you mean by industrially processed oils? Well, let's talk about how you make olive oil to start with. So you take olives, you put them in a big press, you might chew them up first, and you squeeze them. Oil comes out. That's extra virgin olive oil. Process is done. And it can't be done at high temperatures. I believe that the restriction is 80 degrees Fahrenheit for the temperature that you're allowed to squeeze olives to make extra virgin olive oil. Compare what we just described for extra virgin olive oil, and you could say a similar thing about coconuts for that matter, and compare it to the industrial processing that leads to, for example, avocado oil, canola oil, and the others, which leads to a solution, a fatty solution that is clear, almost flavorless, and pretty much nutrient-free, and has been processed at, in many cases, anywhere from 200 to 500 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you ever see the word cold pressed on these oils, then the question to ask the producing company is, after it was pressed, what temperatures did it reach during processing? And if it reached the temperatures I just cited, 200 to 500 degrees Fahrenheit, is it ethical to call it cold pressed? It's technically true, but is it ethical? And furthermore, do these oils have any nutritional value at all? I would argue they essentially don't. They have some fatty acids that are essential fatty acids. I'll give you that. But so does many of your other foods, so that's not a problem. And that's not a problem that requires a solution because you're already getting those fatty acids. And these are the foods that are part of that complex of ultra-processed foods, these industrially processed foods, that are, as a group, associated with worse health outcomes. More cancer, more heart disease, more diabetes, more obesity, more mental health problems, and higher total mortality. Now, can we blame these individual kitchen fats like avocado oil and canola oil on the mortality and so on? No. But as a complex of foods, they're part of that same complex. They're novel. Humans have never been exposed to those. They have no obvious nutritional value. They have no evidential sources that say, hey, these are good for you. Whereas olive oil has tradition behind it, It has plausible biological mechanisms because of the tremendous nutritional complexes in there. And it has outcomes data from dozens of studies showing benefit. So, when you're looking for a kitchen oil, extra virgin olive oil is probably should be your number one. Other traditional fats like butter, lard, tallow, that kind of stuff has a useful place. Coconut oil has a tremendous historical background, but I would strongly urge you to not use, even with its high smoke point and so on, avocado oil, canola oil, and all the other highly industrially processed oils that are flavorless, clear, and have no evidence for being good for your health. So let's have just a brief comment just on avocado oil by itself, because it sounds like because we are not favorable towards avocado oil, it sounds like we might be anti-avocado. Avocados are fabulous foods. There's any number of reasons to recommend avocados. But avocado oil is an extensively processed, industrially processed byproduct of avocados. So it's a little bit like saying, I think that apples are really good for you, and apples have fructose in them, and therefore I'm going to eat fructose. That would make no sense to you, I'm sure. High fructose corn syrup comes from corn. I eat corn, therefore I'm going to eat high fructose corn syrup. That doesn't make any sense either. And so it's the critical detail to know is about the industrial processing that takes place. And so if you ever have several hours to waste, try to find out from your supplier of avocado oil or whatever other highly industrially processed oil you're using. Try to get them to send you a schematic of the different steps involved in processing that oil and the temperatures reached at the different steps. And for bonus points, the pressures reached at different steps, because these all create chemical changes in these foods, sometimes referred to as neonutrients, that may be the source of the problems. And smoke point is not a useful measure, I would submit. It either means you haven't added your vegetables soon enough, you're cooking at a higher heat than you need to, or you're not using a traditional high heat method. For example, wok cooking, where they use commonly sesame oil, for example. And in wok cooking, then you get this layer of steam formed over the food that actually protects the food from oxidation during cooking. So there's any number of ways to getting around the smoke point issue, but don't let it be to adopt a food that has no historical precedent, no historical reason for thinking it's healthy, and really weird processing methods that involve big chemistry in a big way. Thank you.